Welcome to the Synergy Sessions, Aging Smarter in Silicon Valley. I'm your host, Tom Nelson, and I know firsthand as a family caregiver and part of the sandwich generation how tough it can be to take care of your aging parents while balancing your own life, career, and family. We'll bring you the experts and information necessary to help make your life a little bit easier and you a little bit smarter. Synergy Sessions is brought to you by Synergy Home Care, bringing you personalized in-home care and peace of mind to Silicon Valley families. I really do hope you enjoy the show. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Synergy Sessions, Aging Smarter in Silicon Valley. Today, I'm very excited to have Joan McCreary from JMPO, Estate and Home Organizing. She is the president and certified professional organizer. From her website, I thought this was amazing. So professional organizers for people and estates, whether you are dealing with grief, past trauma, a life transition, or just feeling overwhelmed, we are here to support you with confidentiality and no judgment. No matter how you got here, an organized home will feel better with JMPO's professional and compassionate care by your side. Welcome, Joan. Thank you so much for
Hi, Tom.
being
It's so
here
nice
today.
to see you.
So the compassionate care part, we were just talking about this before we started. That is a common thread across almost everybody I'm talking to, and in this senior community, either for the sandwich generation, adult children, or the actual seniors we're supporting, that the care piece is, I feel like, is the special sauce that makes this all happen. So first of all, thank you so much for what you're doing and your approach and bringing your gifts and talents to helping seniors in Silicon Valley. Why don't we just start with, what do you do in your role, and in general, what does your company offer, and what do you do for seniors and beyond?
Yeah, we have the absolute pleasure of doing so many different things for folks. It's really about meeting the clients where they're at. But I run the company. I'm primarily building business, making connections, talking to prospective clients. We do go out and do assessments. I actually also do a lot of collectibles advising and valuations for people who have things that they're like, do I sell this? What's it worth? So that's one part. With the senior community, we find that they're always in this transition stage. All these clients that are, whether they're transitioning for mobility changes, their health and physical abilities are changing. They're moving to be near family members or moving into a community. We've got a lot of people who need to be supported in different ways. So we are very flexible. We train about the needs of elder clients. And we're going to be working in their homes with their personal possessions. And we've got to build trust really fast. And we love doing it. So the trust comes really easy. We just have such a fun time working with these clients.
That's amazing. Well, I had this question further down the list, but you've kind of touched on it. What is the difference between working with a professional organizer like yourself, as opposed to just somebody trying to do it themselves or having a friend come over and help them out?
That's a great question. It's for some people, doing things themselves is absolutely fine. They've got the energy, they've got the focus, they've got the strength. Yeah. But when you're working with a friend, there's usually, or even a family member, there's usually some other goal that other person has. They're ascribing like, well, you should be taking it easy. You shouldn't be, cooking anymore. You shouldn't be driving. There's these shoulds. And what a professional does is come in and say, what do you want? What's your goal? And the client really gets to set the whole direction. So we're just guiding them towards what they want to have done, a little more objective, but we also are very skilled. So we have a whole different approach to working with a client that's going to be maybe more efficient, more effective. And we have the experience in working with so many clients that we can see pretty quickly where the pitfalls and where the solutions are going to lie.
Right. Yeah, that's what came up to me when you started talking about that objective. You're right. They're bringing their own perspective. And since they
Right.
know that person, they're trying to make decisions for them. That's great. I mean, that's very much like trying to teach your kids something. They never listen to you. But when you send them to the swim instructor or the music teacher, then they're
Right.
more down to business. So that makes a lot of sense. What are some of the biggest challenges? I mean, you've got two kind of, I think, main buckets. You have somebody who's downsizing or they're getting ready for a move or something like that. Then you have the estate. But let's start, like, what are the
Yeah.
challenges with the senior looking to declutter for or organize or downsize for us?
Right.
A specific reason, either for mobility. Like you said, I wasn't even really thinking about that. They got all these things in the house and now they have new needs.
Right.
But what are the challenges that come up typically
So,
that you're trying to solve?
well, there are a couple of main buckets of categories of challenges. One is the decision making. Sometimes you're so consumed with details like managing your own care, or maybe you've got finances you've got to deal with and they've changed, that making decisions on your personal items can just feel burdensome and difficult. So when you have somebody who's there supporting you through this process and not just encouraging you to make decisions, but saying, you know, you you can make the decisions if you want, but it's also okay to defer some things, right? So those are some of the decision making team tends to be really hard. We address that part sometimes by dealing with low hanging fruit, building up the resilience and decision making by dealing with the easy stuff first.
Right.
Another big challenge is, what am I going to do with it if I don't want it? I don't want to throw this good stuff in the trash. I don't know if it's worth anything. So we help them figure out the ways that we know all the ways to get rid of things, whether it's sellable or donatable. We do not like to send stuff to the trash. So I think that's reassuring to people who are really struggling with like how and whether to get rid of things.
Yeah. So backing up just a little bit. So when somebody comes to you, what is your process like, kind of, because I would imagine a lot of times they don't even know what they need, where to start.
Yeah.
So if they're calling you, what does your process look like? What could somebody expect to make sure that you're helping them down that path?
So it might depend on who's calling. So if an individual needs help for themselves is calling, we're going to start by figuring out what brought them to call in the first place. Maybe somebody referred them. Maybe a home care agency referred them, or their attorney or financial planner and said, you can get some help from someone who really knows how to do the work that you're looking for. Whether that's just making things more organized or helping to sort through and make some room or get ready for an eventual relocation. So that person who's the client calls, we're going to work through how much time do you have? Where are you living right now? What's your environment like? Where are you going to? Or what do you need your environment to shape like? And then so we do a big phone intake first to really make sure it's going to be a good fit and that they're asking the questions that we can actually help them with.
Got it.
So we'll start with that. Now, if it's an adult child who's calling, mom needs help, there's a lot more that has to go into that intake. Does she know you're calling?
Yeah, right.
Does she have capacity to make her own decisions? Because if she does, she's the person we have to speak with.
Right.
It's not about what the adult child necessarily wants, usually coming out of a lot of concern, right? I mean, good reasons, but not necessarily in line with what the parent wants. So we have to really check on that part first.
Okay. And then so from that point, just even getting into just logistics. So then you provide some type of a proposal for them and then do like a home visit, and then how does that work?
Sometimes we can. So if they're just looking for some ongoing support, which a lot of people do, like, oh, I need to declutter, but I can only work about 3 hours at a time, which is perfect for us. And I need maybe one person, one-to-one, just to kind of help me go through stuff. that we might just be able to set up an arrangement right there on the phone. We don't always need to go into the home. We have a very extensive phone intake. So our tip, but we do have a client agreement, documents our rates, documents just basic outlines of, if you've got any hazardous issues, we need to know about it. If you've got any, physical needs, we need to know about these things. We get we send them that client agreement, and then services are just paid on a daily basis as we work. Some clients have a much more condensed timeline, and we're going to be setting up lots of appointments within 2 weeks, and we're going to maybe invoice at the end of that period. But we do need to get a client agreement going. And then, as I said, we assign one of our wonderful staff organizers to work one-to-one with the client. An example is we've got a woman who had her granddaughter and great-granddaughter living with her after her husband died. And she just didn't have the resilience with all the chaos that was going on in the house to take care of things. And her house was full. And she finally, I got some guidance from her attorney, said, look, bring Joan's firm in. JMPO, they are so kind. They can just help you get through some of these things. So we've been working with her for a number of months on a weekly basis, just once a week. And rooms are starting to lighten up. You can walk through the hall. There's no stuff laying all over the place. Her granddaughter and great-granddaughter's areas are tidied up, and the house just feels so much calmer. And she's going to live there for the rest of her life if she can.
Yeah. Oh, that's amazing. Well, on the other side of the coin, so if it's an estate, and I just had this personal experience cleaning out my parents' house this year after 60 years of living there.
Yeah.
And they were definitely savers. Everything that was my grandparents were now in their house, and it was a very big house. So every nook and cranny. And I went through, and I was kind of laughing when you were saying going through, the decision-making process. I mean, I was disconnected from most of their, papers and whatever. But I was thinking, oh my gosh, going through that process with the person that's living in there and making those decisions. And I had trouble doing it. So on the estate side of things, not necessarily working with the family, but what if somebody's just, I'm overwhelmed, or I'm out of state, or I'm like not available to be engaged with this. How does that work? And they just say, just do it. Here's the keys, Joan.
Pretty much. I'll give you an example. So we recently worked for an older woman who had moved out to another state to live with her extended family because of her physical needs. She just needed that social support, but also physical needs. So she packed a suitcase and left.
Oh, okay.
And then she's got a condo that needs to be cleared out, but also there might be some things that she still wants.
Sure.
So we went through the place, we cleared out the food, and we sorted through the clothes and tidied things up so we could understand what was in this condo. And then we did a video visit with her, but this could be like with any family member. So even if the client wasn't still living, and we walked through with her to show what was there. And she would say, oh, I want that. Or can I see that? What's on the back of that book? Or, so we were able to then pick out the items that she still wanted, and we packed those up and we shipped them to her, and the rest of them we sold. So, it wasn't maybe 60 years in this case, but it's the same process. We're going to go space by space, room by room, drawer by drawer, pocket by pocket, check for all of those missing things, find all the papers, all those things. And because we don't have the feelings connected to the history here, it's just a much smoother process than you looking at your parents' things and going, oh my gosh, I didn't know mom took this course on astrophysics when she was, when I was in high school. Things that happened, your parents don't always tell you these things. And you're just caught up in all this new, amazing discovery.
Yeah.
But we don't have that thing. We're not going through and going, oh, wow, I can't believe Mrs. Jones took that class in astrophysics. That doesn't matter to us. But we're going to just gather it up and put it to the side and then let the family decide later. So whether the family is on site or not on site, we can still get through these estates, help them make the decisions. That's the primary focus and enjoyment of our estate organizing. We love to do that. Just making sense of those years and years of living here.
Yeah.
And then the selling part is, and the liquidation is definitely something we do. We're very good at it. It's a large part of our business, but it's not the focus. We're not an estate sale company, but we do offer similar types of selling services. Yeah.
As part of the package. So then you would, so how does that work then? You would actually create like an estate sale within the property?
Yeah, so we don't do a traditional estate sale. We do an online auction. So we have an auction platform that we use. It's linked in our website. People could go and see past auctions. We had one that closed last night in Pleasanton. And so tomorrow will be the pickup. And they do pretty well. I'd say it's a very good approximation of market prices that you're going to get. We sell expensive things and not expensive things. So we could sell all the chemicals that are left and all the cleaning supplies.
Yeah.
We just can't, there's a few limitations, but we can sell a lot. And it's very efficient. About 95% of what we put into auction sells. And then the things that don't sell, we find new homes for.
Okay. No, that's great. I mean, and I had no idea, because I would imagine many people I don't want people traipsing through my house and this and that, and to have that online auction, that's amazing. I would imagine most people aren't even aware that exists. So that's a great little nugget there.
Oh, you nailed it, Tom. That's what we try to position this auction as, an alternative to that estate sale environment where people are traipsing through the house. And, I think what my experience is that the proceeds are probably about similar to what an estate sale might get. The highest value things, we also have other channels that we sell. So we take the gold and silver and maybe the furs or expensive paintings. We'll sell those in a different manner that is appropriate to them. But that's also the nice thing. We have a lot of options, even beyond what we've just discussed, how to get things into people's hands. We really want to rehome things that still have a life. They don't always have a lot of sale value, but they still have a life. And there's a reason most of the time why that stuff was still in the house. And it's because somebody couldn't stand for it to just go to the trash. And we don't want to see things go to the trash either.
No, absolutely.
Yeah.
And from my experience too, when you have a higher value item, when you put it online, you broaden your audience and you can find people who actually want that thing, as opposed to some random person who's stumbling upon your estate sale in your neighborhood. They're probably not going to offer up the same.
Right. So there's a lot of marketing that goes on. The platform that we used as their own marketing. And now we have a really solid list of people that we said, well, and estate sale companies do too. They have a mailing list. They have people who follow them. So it's not wrong to do an estate sale. It's just another option, right? So
absolutely. I think that's, as I mentioned, if somebody doesn't want to have something like that where people, or maybe it's not appropriate, they're not nearby, or they don't want to have people on their property, or just for liability reasons, there's
all sorts of things. Yes, exactly.
What about, this is always kind of a fun one. What are the misconceptions around hiring an organizer? Or, I mean, there's again, you have a continuum of services, but what do you run into when people have some, maybe a false expectation of what it's going to be, or a misconception of it?
Well, I think one of the big ones is people are afraid that the organizer is going to come in there and tell them to get rid of stuff. And no, that's what your friend's going to do. Your friend is going to come in and tell you to just get rid of stuff. A truly professional organizer will not do that. They will first, talk to you about what your options are. And usually that's, they're like, oh, I don't know how to fit more. I don't know. What do you can only fit so much into a cupboard, right? So how do I make this better? Well, then we'll walk through the options. You can stack. You can consolidate, you can get rid of things, but it's always the client's option. There's really should not be any shoulding. There should not be shoulding. So that's one of the big things, is they're going to tell me to get rid of things. Another one is, if I bring an organizer in, I'm not going to know where anything is anymore, which is kind of an interesting issue to consider, because if you have a very, very cluttered house, some people might call it hoarding, but truly hoarding is its own issue. I do have a lot of training in that area, and I want to just insert that I encourage everybody to stop using the word because it's a very pejorative term. But
Sure.
it looks like a hoarding type of situation because it's very cluttered, lots of piles. And truly, people who are living with very chronic disorganization situations are reliant on a fragile system of organizing, which means that everything is out in the open. They kind of know where things are. They think they know where everything is.
Right.
And so that disruption, when you're organizing, you have to be very cautious and you have to know what you're getting into with the psychology there. But I think also the other misconception is that if you have a lot of stuff, you are a quote hoarder. And there's a lot of shame that holds people back from getting help because they are, comparing themselves to those TV shows and to the magazines and just like body image problems.
Sure.
Home image problems, right? I don't want to have anybody over. In fact, a lot of our clients are dealing with chaos. Can't have anyone over syndrome. And we really want that. So a misconception is that you can't even bring an organizer in when you're really, really messy. But you can. Yeah. We don't care what their homes look like. We don't.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. Yeah, that's so true. I mean, that's where I feel like, if somebody's so stuck, they can't have friends, family, or anybody come over. And that's why I love the no judgment and the compassionate piece in your message that I think is so important. Is there a job too small or a job too big? I mean, is there like when you walk into a situation where not calling it hoarder, but they've just got so much stuff and it's a mix of just collecting things as well as garbage? And I mean, is there a wall that you have?
Is there a line somewhere?
Is there a line or?
The line is pretty far. It has to be almost a biohazard situation for us to not be able to work there. We work in some pretty severely cluttered homes, what we call high density.
Okay. Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
A lot of volume. And we can work there. That's fine. It's when there's maybe, rodent issue or human waste or pet waste
or other pets
that we have to, worry about. We've definitely worked in places where people have passed away and there needs to be a little bit of remediation by a special
like
company.
hazmat.
And so once that's done, then we can go in and take care of stuff. But there's no job too small. I would say only maybe by the hour. Like I'll do an hour consultation, but the hands-on work has to be 2 to 3 hours.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. Got it. So that kind of leads to one of the questions that always comes up, like from how do you pay for a perspective? Like I would imagine out of pocket is, the no-brainer, but are there other ways that can they pay for your services if they don't have money now? Are there either governmental grants or they pay for it through, the home sale or something like that?
Yeah. There's a few options. So most people do pay out of pocket. If they're selling their home, then yes, we can make arrangements to have the funds paid out of their escrow account. There's a little fee for that deference. Some realty companies have these kind of bridge loans where the realtor or broker will front the money for getting the home ready, getting the client ready to move out. And then the brokerage gets paid out of escrow. So that's one way. As far as grants and other types of funding, it's very thin. So far, insurance generally does not pay for this kind of work, but there have been some exceptions. And it's always worth asking your health insurance company as well as social services. For example, SourceWise, which is our local area agency on aging.
Adriana was a guest.
Oh, yeah. They're wonderful, wonderful agency. And sometimes they have grant money that can be applied. Now, they have to be current clients of SourceWise that are being supported, maybe Some of them have IHSS support, perhaps. And sometimes the social workers have discretionary funds.
Okay.
Another thing that's been very surprising is we've actually been paid by Adult Protective Services
Oh,
a
okay.
few times, mostly Santa Cruz County, where we're not doing as much work there, but I do have some good referrals. And then Santa Clara County once. And they actually outlaid some funds for us to help adults who were really struggling
Wow.
in their own homes. And it was dangerous, on the precipice
Yeah.
of they would need to be
Sure.
removed for hazardous situations. So
Yeah.
and hazardous is, not just like waste, but it's clutter, it's trip hazards.
Yeah.
It's if they had a fall, they wouldn't be able to send emergency medical services in to get these people out. So
Right. Yes.
we there's a lot of health and safety issues first, which is actually how we approach just about every client. The first thing we're doing is just like the home care environment, right? You're assessing how safe is this, not only for us to work here, but for this client. What do we need to do immediately?
Yeah. Wow. And you mentioned their health insurance, because I would imagine if it is a mental health issue, potentially there's some crossover there.
Yeah. So there you could put, you could make the claim and see if it could be worked. Here's one other area is we actually have had some homeowners insurance coverage where there have been if there was a water damage, like a sudden emergent, like a pipe burst, and then they had to move everything out, then they've paid for us to come in and unpack.
Okay.
So, some surprising ways that we've been paid here and there. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's great, because that's another area where I was thinking that, if they don't have the money for it, there might be other ways, depending what their circumstance is.
And they should always talk to a financial advisor or tax consultant, CPA, when they're kind of trying to figure out these whole things, because changes have huge financial impact. Even if you're on Medi-Cal or Medicare, you need to be careful about selling your home and moving money in and out of trusts, and it's delicate stuff.
Got it. We've covered a lot of ground. Is there something that we haven't talked about yet that might be important for people to know about your services?
I want to highlight that we have some pretty phenomenal project management skills. So when we take on a client, we're looking at the whole client, not just like, what do we have to do in the kitchen with the client, but are there other things that have to happen? Sometimes there are. So whether it's planning for a move, that's one of our big service areas, or sometimes it's a remodel. They're just remodeling a bathroom. They've got to get packed up. So we are going to look at that whole start to finish, all of the moves that need to be made on this chess game. We also are an excellent resource for other services. So we love to refer to other senior services that they may not be aware of. Home care agencies are certainly a big one, but also placement agencies. They don't always know. And I'm sure you work with a lot of placement agencies. They just don't know about this service and how they don't have to be the one to do all this research. So we love to do lots of connecting of our clients to our wide range of resources. I do a lot of networking in lots of, not just senior service circles, but also other business circles. So that's a really good thing. And then, as I mentioned briefly earlier on, as I do a lot of collectibles advising. And so folks who are really interested in just knowing what things are worth or what they would do with things, I'll come for a fee, come into your home, do a workup, do the research if needed. And then I also buy gold and silver for clients who need to, they're like, my kids don't want any of the silver service. I'm like, okay, well, we can get you some good money for that if you want.
Oh, wow.
So,
Oh, that's great, because that's definitely something that people don't know where to start with either.
Right.
We found a number of coins at my parents' house, and that's the thing. It's like, what is it worth? And I just coincidentally happened to have I I can't even pronounce it's a nesmatologist or something, like the person who does the coin.
Pneumastist or something.
Yeah.
It's a hard word to say.
Yeah. And it's like there's so many different layers to that too. If it's before this certain date, then they're silver and they're worth this much. And then you don't know where to go. So that's great that you provide that service, because that's just another kind of place where people just get stuck, and it just seems like it's overwhelming. And then also, just as you mentioned, learning about these services, because in my experience, many of my clients, they already go do it all themselves. They've reinvented the wheel in so many different ways. And then they say, oh, we're now doing this. It's like, oh, I could have referred you to X, Y, and Z people, and they could have helped you through that. And you would have saved a bunch of time and probably money, and probably would have had it done better.
Right.
And more effective and efficient. So that's great. I am so happy you've come on today, because I am, really didn't know that you did all these other things as well. So thank you so much. I'm trying to think if there was any other. How do people contact you? And maybe what is we'll have all your information in the show notes and everything, so they'll be able to click to your website and all the different ways they can contact you. But should they contact you when they're ready to go, or maybe when they're thinking about it, or what's the best kind of way to do it? Is there too soon or too late, or
I don't think there's too soon. There's definitely too late.
Okay.
Right. But every once in a while we do have last minute openings if somebody's got an urgent need, but many times we're booked out 6 weeks.
Okay.
Other times we're booked out 2 weeks. So it's kind of we're always having to take on new clients because we finish up and we need to move on. The best way to reach us is whatever is convenient for the individual. So on our website, we have a message option. They can call. I have a wonderful administrative team who usually is the one to call back the leads, new client inquiries. So email to me or to our info@jmpoestate.com. jmpoestate.com is our website. And we also take texts to the company number. So that's fine for those who prefer that.
Okay. Excellent. Well, thank you so much for being on the Synergy Sessions, Aging Smarter in Silicon Valley. In this case, whether you're trying to make yourself smarter for your own needs or for a loved one that you're taking care of. Thanks again, Joan. And thanks everybody for being on here listening to the Synergy Sessions. We'll see you all next time. Thank you for joining us on the Synergy Sessions. We know you have a lot on your plate, so we really appreciate you spending the time with us today. If you found the information in this episode useful, please reach out to the guest or the resources in the show notes. I know they would appreciate it and would love to help. Also, if you have an idea for a future episode, please reach out to us on Instagram or Facebook, or email us and let us know. We'd love to hear from you and provide information that's useful. Lastly, please remember, you don't have to do this alone.